Good evening. I'm going to tell you a story tonight about Jeanette, who is an immunologist in my lab and is sitting in the audience tonight. And it's about a project that we've been working on together that we're very excited about, along with a few folks from our lab. It starts with a puzzle, and I'm going to frame it this way. If I asked you, what do you think the immune system is thinking? What is it trying to do when it sees a pathogen? We could debate, but we would probably end up agreeing that it's trying to limit replication and dissemination so you don't die. But if I asked you, what do you think the immune system is thinking? What is its purpose when it sees a microbial colonist that lives in the gut or on the skin? I don't think you would know. These are our friends, right? So if I told you that the immune system doesn't see them at all because there's a barrier in the way, or it does see them, but it knows they're not there to cause harm, so it gives a friendly wave and walks in the other direction, then you wouldn't be surprised. But that's not what happens. What does happen is that certain bugs, when you put them in the gut or on the skin of a mouse, lead to a big burst of immune cells on the other side of the barrier. This is the T cell that Allison just told us about. This is an unusual response in three ways. The first is that it's quite large, not subtle at all. So something important is happening here. The second is that it comes about in an unusual way. Ordinarily, when you get an adaptive immune response, it's because there is a breach in the barrier, an infection, or a needle poking through your skin. The 5-alarm fire, immune cells rush in, there's a lot of swelling, and you might feel lousy. In contrast, the process on the right is completely different. When you colonize a mouse with a bug from in the gut or on the skin and look at the tissue, it's completely silent. Nothing seems to be happening. About a week later, a bunch of immune cells show up, and this leads to the third strange element, which is that they don't do anything. They just loiter right underneath the site of colonization. Now, this didn't add up for me and Jeanette. The immune system typically doesn't trifle. When it acts, it means business, and we wanted to figure out what kind of business it means. So at this point, Jeanette made two important decisions. The first is that she decided she was going to study this in the context of a skin colonist named Staph epidermidis. This is a relative of the pathogen Staph aureus, which causes staph infections, but Staph epidermidis is a friendly bacterium that colonizes every square centimeter of skin on every human on the planet. Second, Jeanette reasoned that T cells don't communicate well. You can't just ask them, what are you here to do? However, the other arm of the adaptive immune system, the one that makes antibodies, is a lot clearer. When your immune system makes antibodies, it's because it perceives something foreign as a threat. So Jeanette decided to ask, does the immune system make antibodies in response to colonization by Staph epidermidis? There's no way, right? Because there's skin in the way, plus what business does the immune system have getting worked up over a friendly bacterium that's living harmlessly on the skin? However, Jeanette had an intuition that there was more going on here than we had realized, so she did the experiment. It was a very simple experiment. The mice aren't prepared in any way. All Jeanette does is to dip a Q-tip in a bacterial culture and then rub it gently on the head of the mouse. That's the whole experiment. What I'm showing on the right is the kind of data that we're all used to seeing when you're measuring the antibody response to a vaccine. You remember you get your first shot, and then the level of antibody in your bloodstream goes up a little bit, and then you wait 3 or 4 weeks and you get your second shot, and it goes up more. However, when Jeanette colonized these mice, something unexpected happened, unexpected in two ways. The first thing that happened is that the level of antibody in the bloodstream just went up and up and up until about 6 weeks when it reached a level that was truly extraordinary. This is more antibody than we would have seen had we vaccinated the mice by conventional means. Second, the antibody response stays there forever. Jeanette just sent me data last weekend from a 9-month time point in a similar experiment, and the antibody level is exactly the same as I'm showing you here. It's almost as though the process of colonization is rendering the mice immune to this skin colonist. Okay, so what did Jeanette do next? She wanted to know, what is the target of this immune response? What are the antibodies binding to molecularly? Through a series of clever experiments, she found that they're targeting this giant tree-like protein that sits on the surface of the bacterial cell. The green and yellow part is the trunk that sticks straight up through the Kevlar-like meshwork that coats the bacterial cell to display the red and blue bits above the arbor, as it were. So this gave Jeanette an interesting idea. If the immune system is making antibodies against the red piece, then what if we replace the red piece with something that we want antibodies against? Jeanette chose tetanus toxin, which is something that we're all vaccinated against. So she's reasoning that what if we engineer Staph epidermidis to make a variant of this tree-like protein that displays tetanus toxin? Could we trick the immune system into making antibodies against tetanus? I thought this was a great idea on paper. A tall order in practice, though. This is a giant protein, 1,400 amino acids, has to snake itself through a pore, single file, and then autonomously refold on the outside of the bacterial cell into a shape that's going to be functional. And to engineer a protein like this and expect that it's still going to be active was a long shot. So you could imagine that Jeanette and I had high hopes and low expectations. And so it was that we were both surprised and delighted when Jeanette gathered the data that I'm showing you on this slide. Once again, she took a Q-tip, dipped it in the bacterial culture, this time of this engineered form of Staph epidermidis, and rubbed it gently on the head of the mouse. And now she's monitoring for the level of antibody against tetanus. Of course, when the mice aren't colonized with anything, there's no antibody in their bloodstream against tetanus. But when she colonized their head with her test article, this engineered strain of Staph epidermidis, we saw an exuberant antibody response against tetanus. We estimate that this is probably 100-fold more than we would have needed in order to protect these mice against a lethal challenge with tetanus toxin. And I'm going to show you those mice right now because this is when we realized just how powerful a system we were working with. The mice on the left have just been injected with tetanus toxin. And you can see they're having a lot of trouble. They're in the control group, so they have nothing protecting them. The mice on the right were colonized with their test article, and you can see they're walking around, show no signs of trouble after having been injected with tetanus toxin. Remember, all they got was the Q-tip on the head. So this is a very strong physiologic response to have induced with such a gentle maneuver. We're quite excited about the possibility that this could become a new kind of vaccine with very interesting properties. First, there's no needle, so there's no need for a healthcare worker. This could arrive in the mail in a ketchup packet, and you would rub it behind your ear in a cream. That would be pretty cool. Second, when you get a COVID shot or a flu shot, you'll often feel lousy for a day or two. The term of art there is reactogenicity, and it's the feeling of your immune system kicking in. For reasons we don't yet understand, when we colonize mice with Staph epidermidis, there's no reactogenicity at all. You get a strong immune response without feeling lousy. If this holds through monkeys and into humans, we could eliminate one of the most stubborn barriers to vaccine uptake that still exist. Third, the connoisseurs in the room will know that one of our greatest wishes for new vaccines that people are trying to develop is that they'll give us not just antibody in your bloodstream, which you get through a normal vaccination that goes into your muscle, but also antibody in the mucus that lines your nostrils and lungs, which is really important for blocking the transmission of infection. For reasons I think we're beginning to understand, colonizing with Staph epidermidis yields a very strong antibody response at these mucosal surfaces, which could make for a really potent vaccine. Finally, I would never take my kids to the doctor's office to get 6 shots. There would be some kind of mutiny. But I could ask them to rub 6 tabs of cream on their skin. Imagine one for flu behind their left ear, and RSV behind the right ear, and metapneumovirus in the left elbow, and SARS-2 in the right elbow. A combination product like that that could protect broadly against respiratory infection would be quite impactful. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with one last bit of science. We think we're beginning to understand how this works mechanistically. We believe that there are immune cells in your skin that reach across the skin barrier to the outside world, grab antigen, bring it back inside while you're well, and preemptively mount an antibody response against what they find. If that's true, then not only is it an important finding in terms of basic science, overturning the way we think the immune system works, but it also could be quite impactful in terms of the applications it could have. So what's next? We're working very hard to optimize the way that this vaccine works in lab mice, and then once that's done, like other candidate vaccines, we will take this into monkeys, which are used because they're quite predictive of how a vaccine will behave in humans. And after the monkeys, we will run a phase 1 clinical trial in humans to test directly whether this kind of vaccine can protect against infection. Some of you will know that right now is a difficult time in biotechnology, especially for companies that are somewhere between inception and human data. So we're going to do all of this work at Stanford. Lloyd and his team have made this an amazing place for us to take this unlikely technology from inception to early proof of concept, and we think this is the perfect place to go from where we are right now to our first data in humans. I have to be honest, this might not work. But if it does, it's going to be quite impactful, and that is the kind of work we should be doing here.